Boldwood presents Killing Eve, Long Shot, written by Luke Jennings and read by Lucy Patterson. Chapter 1. The man is sitting on a bench, hunched forward over his phone, when he sees the woman walking towards him. Wavering torchlight precedes her along the path. He checks the time on his phone. It's gone 11 p.m. The woman's alone, and he registers her choppy blonde hair, a peacoat, and jeans. Her apparently heedless vulnerability triggers his interest. The torch she's carrying isn't necessary. London's never entirely dark. It's just something to have in her hand. Something, in theory, to defend herself with. He's seen these makeshift weapons before, the clutched keys and pens, the aluminium water bottles, once a sex toy. None the slightest use if you're terrified, if you know that the thing that you've always imagined, the absolute worst thing, is about to actually happen. He knows that she's seen him, and he knows what's going through her mind. Is it too late to turn back, or would this tell him that she was afraid? If she shows that she's afraid and runs, is this better or worse than continuing with pretended confidence towards him? Is she imagining things, seeing danger when it's not there? Aren't most people decent and kind? Isn't this just some guy enjoying the solitude and silence of nightfall? Or was the decision to take this shortcut across Regent's Park the worst mistake of her life? The man knows that the woman is thinking these things because he can see it in her body language, in her wavering pace and fixed, straight-ahead gaze. She's perhaps 30 meters away now, and still walking towards him. Between the two of them and the edge of the park, there's a sports complex and tennis courts. The security lights around the courts cast a dim light on the path, illuminating the woman's hair and face. The man, shadowed by a low stand of trees, knows that he's visible only as a silhouette. He turns off his iPhone, and it occurs to him, fleetingly, that it's time to scrap the fucking thing, expensive though it was. There's too much freaky shit on there. The woman appears to have come to a decision, and walks faster. She's going to steer straight past the man, looking neither to her right nor to her left, ships passing in the night, and continue on her way. He recognizes this last-minute decisiveness. He's seen it before. Several times, in fact. "Hey," he says quietly as she passes. "How's it going?" He always asks them a question like this because it forces the issue. They can either respond and, in some sense, collude with what follows, or they can remain silent, proclaim their hostility and fear, and invite what follows. "Hey," he says, "I'm talking to you." She walks on, and he rises from the bench and falls into step behind her. Her pace quickens, and so does his. He knows this dance. The choreography is entirely familiar. He sees her trying to balance the urge to run with the realization that any second now, the thicket by the side of the path is going to occlude the glow of the security lights so that the two of them will be in near darkness. She stops, as they always do. "What do you want?" she asks, and he notices a pale facial scar. "You know exactly what I want," he says. And at that moment, he sees her eyes, calm and unafraid, and knows that he's misread her. She needs to be paralyzed with fear, and she isn't. Not at all. He knows that he should walk away and vanish into the night, but some furious and illogical impulse makes him stay. He's the mastermind. He's started, so he'll finish. There's a dull drumbeat in his ears, and an icy fist is clutching his heart. How dare she look at him like that? How fucking dare she? He feels almost nauseous in his anticipation of her surrender. He grabs her by the shoulders with both hands, feels the soft wool of her coat, and pushes her towards the darkness. She resists and slips and slides a step or two. "Get down," he mutters, his voice a dry-mouthed rasp. "Get down." He tries to shove her to the ground, but at that moment the steel-bodied torch, swung back-handed, meets his cheekbone with such force that there's nothing but splintering impact and explosive pain. He collapses onto his hands and knees, drooling, and a second blow, double-handed this time, smashes his skull like a rotting pumpkin. Villanelle plays the torch beam on his upper body. Several teeth are scattered on the path, and there's a widening puddle of blood and brain matter leaking from his head. But happily, none of this has got on her tights, or on her aquazura leopard print loafers. Straightening her peacoat, she saunters towards the exit, a spring in her step now. On the pavement, she glances northwards towards Camden Town, sees the orange light of an approaching taxi, and raises her hand. "Okay, I admit this was an indulgence. Strictly speaking, I didn't have to walk past him, and I certainly didn't have to actually kill him. But the moment came, and I overwhelmingly needed to do it. Wrong at one level, obviously, but so right at another. And oh my God, the rush! It's been so long since I let the beast out like that. Obviously, I can't tell Eve. The recklessness of it would freak her out. But she'd also be upset at a deeper level because it would prove to her what she's always feared, that my nature cannot be corrected, even by her love. So, no need to mention tonight's escapade, although I must say it has put me in quite an excitable mood." After a 20-minute taxi ride, Oxana walks into the Mayfair apartment she shares with Eve. "Angel!" Eve calls out, wineglass in hand. "How was the Russian book group?" "Really fun." "I love that you're making friends. What were you talking about this evening?" "A short story by Anton Chekhov called Polinka." "Good?" "Wonderful." "And this week you all met in Marylebone?" "Yes, Sussex Place." "What were the other people like?"
"Rich."
"Did they feed you?"
"Sort of. Russian snacks like pierogi and piroshki. Nice, but not enough. I had about 6, and the hostess glared at me. I'm starving."
"So you had a nice time?"
"Yes. Kiss me."
Eve puts down her glass and complies. Oxana sighs.
"Don't stop."
"You're in a romantic mood this evening."
"Are you not?"
"I didn't say that."
"So?"
"I thought you were hungry."
"I am."
She takes Eve's hand and forces it down the front of her jeans.
"But this first."
Chapter 2. It's the next morning, and Eve's in the kitchen, wrapped in a dressing gown, listening to BBC Radio 4. Oxana drifts in, wearing earbuds and a kimono, mouthing the words of the Ethel Cain song, Punish. Eve watches her for a moment. "Angel, seriously, how many times?" Oxana takes out her headphones. "What? How many times do I have to tell you?"
"Tell me what?"
"About the dishwasher."
"What about it?"
"You can't just shove stuff in, higgledy-piggledy."
"Why not?"
"Because it wastes space, and that wastes hot water. Look what you've done with your breakfast things."
"Babe, there's no correct way to stack a dishwasher."
"Look, these wide gaps are for bowls. The narrow ones are for plates. If you put your cereal bowl in the plate bit, it's
what?"
"It's wrong."
"Babe."
"Don't babe me."
"Babing you is literally my job description."
"I just like it my way, okay? So, please, bowls in the bowl rack, plates in the plate rack, dinner plates on the outside, side plates in the middle."
"How's that logical?"
"What?"
How does it matter what order you put the plates in the plate rack? They're all plates.
It's how I like it.
I know, but why?
Eve looks exasperatedly at the floor, then out of the window at the rain-washed roofs opposite. The flat in which she and Oxana are temporarily installed is on the top floor of a Georgian mansion on South Audley Street in Mayfair. It's luxuriously comfortable, but something about it, some essential soullessness, defeats her. 4 stories below, the street's boutiques and art galleries are opening for the day. Wet pavements shine beneath a grey sky. The couple have been back in London for almost a month now. September's almost over and autumn here. They moved into the flat shortly after the termination of the Dominique assignment. That had started straightforwardly enough, with the two of them tasked with guarding the son of a wealthy Russian financier, but things had soon veered in unexpected and weirdly violent directions. The financier was furious at the outcome, but Johnny Fernandez, Eve and Oxana's handler, was pleased with the way the pair had dealt with the ambiguous and complex situation. Perhaps more importantly, so were the 12. A tentacular, quasi-political organization, the 12, Dvernatsat, was born in Russia in the late Soviet era. It comprised a dozen political thinkers and strategists who saw, before anyone else, the way the wind was blowing and acted on it. Power no longer resided with visible governments or organizations, they realized, but with invisible, behind-the-scenes forces capable of ruthlessly manipulating world events to their own advantage. Decades later, their successors have infiltrated all the world's major corporations and political organizations. Much of the 12's success can be attributed to the skill with which it recruits those who can assist it in its aims. Oxana was 23 and awaiting trial for triple murder in the Russian city of Perm, when she was offered the choice between life spent in a penal institution or a career as an assassin for the 12. It didn't take her long to make her mind up. Trained to kill, she took to her new métier like a duck to water. But neither she nor the 12 had reckoned on the intervention of a quiet but determined British Security Service officer. Eve Polestri's pursuit of Villanelle, as Oxana was codenamed, was initially a straightforward hunt for a killer. But as the months passed and the hunt took ever more circuitous turns, the nature of the thing changed until it was no longer clear to either of them who was the pursuer and who the pursued. Fascination became obsession, and in defiance of their respective employers, the pair went on the run together, opening a Pandora's box of murder, jealousy, and betrayal. Following an austere few months living off-grid in Russia, Eve and Oxana are now working for the 12 in London. Here, long starved of what Oxana calls nice things, they've made up for lost time, stocking up on organic Peruvian coffee, cocoa-dusted chocolate pistachios, vintage pink champagne, hazelnut vodka, Olverum bath oil, Ortega Sicilia soap, and Anima Mundi scent. Of course, there's the other, less freely available stuff, the things that, when needed, are needed badly. The ceramic stabbing knife that Oxana carries in her belt, Eve's Glock 9mm pistol, and Oxana's Sig Sauer P365, both of which live in the fridge. "Why, babe?" Oxana persists. "Why what?" "Why do we have to put the dinner plates on the outside and the side plates in the middle?" "God, are you still on that?" "Yes. It doesn't make sense." Eve raises her hands and slowly brings them down. "It's just my thing, okay?" She stares down at the slate kitchen counter. It's
It's so that the big plates can protect the little ones.
I know it makes no sense. No sense at all. Oxana knows about my compulsive need to create orderly patterns in my life, and she doesn't make a thing of it. But she doesn't really understand it, and neither do I. It started a year ago, when Oxana allowed me to think for a week that she had been killed by security forces in Moscow. That broke something inside me, and my mind started playing games. An insinuating little voice whispered that if I lined up my makeup jars in a particular way in our St. Petersburg flat, Oxana would be protected from harm. I knew that this didn't make any sense at all, but by then I didn't dare put the matter to the test. So every exit, every departure from the flat became a matter of checking and rechecking that Oxana's safety had been secured. Oxana knows that although she had no choice about letting me think she was dead, she's responsible for my continuing distress. She understands me so well in some ways and not at all in others. She thinks that because I'm brave, her word, I have limitless emotional resilience. What she doesn't see is that the bravery's just a front. A barricade I put up to protect myself from the consequences of loving her. Oxana steps forward and takes Eve's shoulders.
Pupsik, you have to trust me. I can look after myself. I'm a big girl. You have to stop worrying.
I can't help it. I know.
Moscow. I know.
Not just Moscow. You nearly had your brains blown out on London Bridge, and you'd have drowned if I hadn't saved you. She runs a finger along the pale scar that runs from Oxana's cheekbone to her temple and caresses her torn ear. All these battle scars, my love. You're running out of lives. Oxana says nothing, but tightens her grip on Eve's shoulders. I'm sorry I behave weirdly, Eve murmurs, with my rituals and everything. She leans her head forward so that her cheek is brushing Oxana's. Just indulge me, okay? Oxana strokes Eve's hair.
Do you know what the Russian for higgledy-piggledy is?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Kaggledy-piggledy.
You're such a bullshitter. Eve pulls away, smiling, and walks across to the stove. Oxana wraps her kimono more tightly around herself.
Do we know how the heating works in this place?
We probably don't. I do. It's in that cupboard. Oxana goes to the cupboard and stares at the boiler as if she's never seen one in her life.
What do I press?
She asks vaguely. Eve ignores her. I've been thinking, she says. All this living in rented flats, all these fancy kitchens.
I'm guessing this step sign means hot water and the radiator one is the heating.
No, it's the particle accelerator. Oxana looks at her blankly and presses a button. There's a whoomph, and she jumps back. I mean, this is very nice, Eve continues. Very convenient for Bond Street and the Burlington Arcade. But it's not a home. All the sofas are so tightly upholstered I slide off onto the floor. We can't snuggle up together and watch TV.
We're safe here. If it gets unsafe, they can move us somewhere else.
They?
Johnny, the 12.
But I don't want to live like that, Angel. I'm fed up of these anonymous apartments. I want somewhere that's ours, and that's full of our things. Somewhere we've chosen, somewhere we love, and always come back to.
I had that in Paris.
I know, but ultimately it was the 12's place, not yours.
So what are you suggesting?
Well, Eve pours herself coffee, tests it with a finger, and puts the porcelain mug in the microwave. Hear me out, okay?
I'm listening.
I think we should go freelance.
Seriously?
Look, for as long as we work for the 12, our lives are not our own. Yes, we get money and Mayfair flats and all that, but what are they going to ask of us in return? Our last assignment was supposed to be easy, just babysitting Valentine, but it got weird fast, and next time it could be something really horrible, something really fucking evil."
"That is kind of the deal," Oxana says.
"Well, it's not a deal I can live with anymore. I'm sorry, Angel, but I can't."
"So you think we should go self-employed?"
"Yes."
"But who would hire us? And to do what?"
"We get Johnny to join us."
"Why would he? Why would he leave the 12?
"He might not, but he might. He might be ready for a change. You and I are a good team, and I think Johnny knows it. He respects us."
"True."
"What I'm suggesting is that we take back control of our lives. For years now we've been working for other people, MI5, MI6, the 12, and frankly, enough of that shit. Enough of risking our necks for organizations that don't care if we live or die. We're just resources to them, pawns. The moment it suits them, they'll sacrifice us without a thought."
"You don't just leave the 12.
"We don't have to leave them, especially with Johnny. We go independent, and they outsource work to us. It's the way things are happening everywhere."
"But babe, why would they give us this work?"
"Because they know us. They know we're smart and efficient and discreet. They know that we know how they work. We wouldn't be a security risk. But I'm not just thinking of the 12. I think we should cast our net wider. I'm sure Johnny's got connections we haven't even dreamt of, and with him as our go-between—"
Oxana nods dubiously.
Eve looks into her eyes. "Can we at least talk about it to Johnny? He might want nothing to do with the whole idea, in which case we'll forget it, at least for the time being."
Oxana shrugs. "Well, we are due to see him. Tomorrow, in fact. He's asked us to go to lunch at that weird club of his."
"So, what should we do today?"
"Let's go to Hampstead Heath. I'd like to go on a really long walk."
"It looks a bit wet and grey," Eve says dubiously.
"But okay. It always looks wet and grey. Babe, we're Londoners now. This is what people like us do. They put on their coats and boots and—"
"What do you mean, people like us?"
"Nice people."
"Ah."
"What do you mean, ah?"
"You're very keen on that word, aren't you?" Eve says. "Nice. Nice things. Nice people."
"Yes,"
Oxana says dryly.
"I'm just your regular bougie bitch."
"I didn't say that."
"You meant it." Fuck you, Eve. If you'd grown up like I did, you'd want the things I do."
She marches to the door and snatches her Barber jacket from the hook.
"You take niceness for granted, because you've always been surrounded by it, like it's something to... Ah!"
She stamps her foot.
"Fucking thing!"
"What?"
"This zip."
"Angel, calm down.
It's stuck. Again."
"Here, let me." Eve kneels, and as Oxana stares murderously out of the window, patiently works at the zip. "There was a thing on the BBC News," Eve says. "A man beaten to death in Regent's Park last night. A dog walker found him early this morning. The police have sealed the area off."
"Who was he?"
"They didn't say." "There." She carefully zips Oxana's jacket up to her throat. "All done." She takes her own coat from the hook. "You will be careful coming home at night, won't you? That man wasn't killed far from where you were."
"I'm always careful," says Oxana.
"Don't wear your ear things."
"Babe."
"You need to be able to hear what's happening around you. You can't if you've got your music on full volume."
"Babe, stop worrying."
"Once upon a time, you didn't listen to any music. Ever. Now you only listen to Ethel Cain."
"I love her music. It calms me down. You should try this album."
"What's it called?"
"Perverts." I want so badly to tell Eve about the man in Regent's Park. I want to tell her that I saw the guy in the distance and just knew how the story would unfold. That the anticipation I felt as I approached the guy was at least as intense as his. That walking along the pavement towards him and feeling the weight and the grip of the torch in my hand, I had already, in my mind, smashed his head to pulp, already seen the blood leaking from the wreckage of his skull. I want to tell her that. In the moments after the killing, I was seized by an excitement so violent it took my breath away. I have to be careful with Eve. She's strong, but not unbreakable. And when she thought I was dead, she very nearly did break. When I realized this and saw how affected she was by my behavior, I hated myself. Why didn't I understand this emotional stuff like the rest of the world did? Why was I always so fucking late to the party? I know that she loves me as Oxana. But does she also love me as Villanelle? Does she love the monster that will always be part of me?
Chapter 3. There's a fine drizzle on the heath, lending the place a ghostly air. Eve and Oxana stand at the summit of Parliament Hill, looking over the city. "I love it here," Eve says. "On a clear day you can see for miles and miles, far beyond London."
What is there beyond London?
Country towns full of financiers who commute to London every day, then seaside towns full of people who've moved out of London, then the sea.
So nothing, basically.
Nothing for us. We belong here. This is where our people are.
Who are our people?
People who don't join things or fit in or play by the rules.
Do you miss having a social life?
Oxana asks.
Like, I don't know, meeting people at the pub, cooking people dinner, hanging out with friends at the weekend, all that stuff that you and, what's his name?
Angel. You know perfectly well what his name is.
All that stuff you and he used to do.
That wasn't my life. That wasn't our life. Nico wasn't English. We didn't have children, and I didn't have a job that I was allowed to talk about. So we were never part of that whole Sunday lunch scene. She turns away from the view towards the woodland to the north. That's the thing about this country. If you're in, but you have to pay to join. You have to cook endless meals for people and listen to them talking about their children and have interminable conversations about property prices and school waiting lists and gluten intolerance and how unfair it is that you can't take dogs on the Eurostar. And honestly, I can't be fucked.
It's a relief to know I'll never be attacked by dogs on the Eurostar.
Angel, that wouldn't happen.
Where I grew up, people had these big guard dogs, and they were on chains, and every time you walked past, they'd leap at you, barking insanely, like they wanted to tear you to pieces. Sometimes they'd be asleep, and I'd try and creep past, but they'd always wake up and go crazy. They had the same dogs, ovcharkas, when I was in prison.
She raises the palms of her hands.
I just can't, okay?
Dogs can be nice, Eve murmurs.
They hate me. They know what I am.
I know what you are, Angel. And I love you.
Yes, but you're lufok. You're fafulil.
What's that mean?
It means you're not right in the head.
In French?
Yes, babe, in French.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. But cats are okay. I liked the Dominique's cat, the one that looked like Julia Stiles.
Cats are manipulative psychopaths.
So?
You don't think one of those in the family is enough? Eve glances at Oxana, but the rain has blurred her glasses, so she can't see her clearly.
We're a family now?
Oxana asks.
Okay, a couple. For richer, for poorer.
Oxana pulls up the hood of her waterproof jacket.
Probably for poorer, if we go with your freelance plan. But that's fine. It's not as if we care about nice things, and if we run out of money, they say that pet food isn't too bad. We can share it with our psychopathic cat. Love will carry us through. You're such a grouch. I know. They make their way along a muddy path, winding between dripping bushes of thorn and bramble. If we were to get a place, where would you—
Maybe somewhere near here, Eve says. Somewhere there's space and trees and fresh air.
If we lived near here, we'd never come here.
That's not true. You could run here. You can run for miles on the heath and never go near a road.
I like high buildings, Oxana says. I like living in the sky.
Okay, Eve says peaceably. The sky it is. Half an hour later, they're passing through an iron gateway into a dense wood of oaks and beeches. Overhead, crows swirl and caw. The track is narrow and puddled, and Eve and Oxana have been walking along it for several minutes when a mud-spattered golden retriever comes bounding towards them. Seeing Oxana, it leaps joyfully towards her, planting its wet paws squarely against her chest and panting enthusiastically.
"Get off me!"
Oxana gasps, flaying. It's okay, Eve says, placing her hand on the dog's silky head and pressing gently downwards. It's just saying hello, aren't you?
It could have rabies,
Oxana says, backing away. It hasn't got rabies, Eve says firmly.
You're a good boy, aren't you?
The dog sits down, panting expectantly. There, you see? Oxana reaches nervously towards the dog, then snatches her hand away when it jumps up at her again. There's a distant shout of, "Haribo! Haribo!" and it gallops away. Oh my God, Eve stares. I don't believe it. Approaching them, but still some distance up the track, are a man and a woman. They pause as the woman attaches the dog to a lead.
Shit,
Oxana says.
Have they seen us?
They have now, Eve mutters with a fixed smile. The man is Nico Polastri, technically still Eve's husband. At some future point their divorce will be finalised, but this has not yet happened. The woman is a stranger. As they draw closer, Nico's face grows pale and hard. The woman, who has wind-blown red hair, waves cheerfully at them. I'm so sorry. He's still very puppyish. She glances at Oxana. Oh my gosh, he's got mud all over your... Her voice falters and she looks at Nico. Eve, he says flatly. Nico, hello. And he stares at Oxana.
Yes, me.
What's going on? The woman asks, pulling Haribo away from Oxana. Nico takes a deep breath. Dido, he says. This is Eve. Dido's mouth falls open. Oh my gosh. Right, I see. I've heard so much about you. All of it terrible, no doubt, Eve says. No, gosh, it's... And this is Oxana.
Hi,
says Oxana.
I like your pink boots.
Oh, thanks. Dido laughs nervously. I bought them for Glastonbury. Green wellies are so... I thought her name was Villanelle, Nico says to Eve.
That's my work name,
Oxana says.
Confusing, I know.
Nico ignores her. Seen much of Belize? He asks Eve. I rather liked her. She's engaged, a nice Bulgarian girl. They keep rats. Nico stares at Eve. Do you know anyone remotely normal? No, I don't think so. Not anymore. Eve turns to Dido. But you seem nice. What do you do? I'm in PR, Dido says, running a desperate hand through her hair. Of course you are. Eve holds out her hand to Oxana. Come on, Angel. We should let these good people go. Oxana takes her hand, then gasps as Haribo drives his nose hard into her crotch. Dido winces. "I'm so sorry."
"Don't worry. Dogs always hate me."
"I can't think why," Nico says. 10 minutes later, Eve and Oxana are sitting in a cafe near the northern boundary of the heath. Eve is worrying at a salad, and Oxana is attacking a plate of sausages and mash. "That wasn't even slightly awkward," Eve says. "The way Nico was looking at us. God."
"At least he's moved on. That's good."
"It's very good. She seemed normal and nice." Eve spears a cucumber slice with her fork. "You know we're having dinner with Johnny Fernandez tonight?"
"Uh-huh. At his club."
"And we've got lunch at Belisa and Billy's on Sunday."
"Seriously?"
Oxana asks. "I told you. You weren't listening. You never listen."
"But you hate Belisa."
"It's time to get over that. What's done is done. She's happy with Billy now, and we all need to move on. Besides, she could help us."
"Ah, the plan again."
Eve ruffles Oxana's hair. "Yes, the plan again." I want to cut our ties to the 12, and I particularly want to cut Oxana's. To them, she's just a killing machine, a highly intelligent and evolved one, but a killing machine nevertheless, and I hate that she's seen in that way. She's proud of her lethal skills, who wouldn't be? But I want her to be proud of her ingenuity, her resourcefulness, and her unique mind. The monster will never wholly go away, but Oxana is more than the monster. She's more than Villanelle. Isn't she? Chapter 4.
"So,"
Johnny says,
"let me get this right. You're proposing that the two of you, and potentially me, separate from the 12 and set up our own entity, our own boutique operation."
"Basically, yes," Eve says.
"Would this entity have any particular loyalty?"
"If we're going to be based here in London, which seems to make the most sense, then we probably wouldn't want to be acting directly against British interests."
"What would our relationship be with the UK security services?"
"Arm's length. Unattributable."
"Other friendly security services?"
"The same." Johnny nods thoughtfully. They're sitting in the dining room of the Indian Military and Sporting Club in St. James Street off Piccadilly. The room is spacious, with candle-lit tables and windows curtained in faded saffron silk. All of the tables are occupied, some by men and women in evening dress, others by less formal groups. Johnny himself is wearing a lounge suit of antique cut and a regimental tie. Oxana is wearing a vintage Saint Laurent tuxedo, Eve a sequined cocktail dress. "Are you still running Billy as a source?" Eve asks. Johnny raises an eyebrow. "Because we're seeing her and Belisa on Sunday."
"Socially?"
"Lunch. Belisa invited us. A peace offering, I'm guessing." Johnny nods. He's about to answer when a file of waiters draws up at their table, carrying silver dishes. White-gloved hands dispense the food.
"I decided to let Billy go," Johnny says, when the waiters have withdrawn. "I was worried that she might betray herself." "Talking in her sleep?" Oxana asks.
"That sort of thing. I want to develop my relationship with Belisa, and she'd never forgive me if she discovered I was running her fiancé as an asset. Also, Belisa might not be MI6's brightest star, but she's smart enough not to share classified information with the person she's sharing her bed with. Retaining Billy was an untenable situation in every way, so I ended it."
"This looks really good,"
Oxana says, spooning chicken vindaloo onto her plate. "The chefs have been here for decades. The menu's not much different from when I first came here in the 80s, and people said it was old-fashioned then." After the meal, they move to the bar, which is decorated with framed photographs of horses, owners and jockeys taken at Indian racecourses. Johnny orders drinks and reminisces about memorable days at the track. Mysore, up in the Chamundi Hills, is the prettiest.